What is up? It's your boy Johnny SHREVE. I have BB Pro, Mr. Tell Like It Is. Welcome back to another tier list. Today we're doing hamstrings. Now, if you're new to the channel, here's how it works. When I go to the gym, I have my go-to exercise, what is basically planned for me that day. So going to the gym, hamstrings, my first exercise. The gym doesn't have the piece of equipment that I need, so I'm gonna go to my option 2. And then I'm gonna go to my option 3. And then basically it goes to, this is all I got. And then meh, which might equal a rest day. Now, how does it work? First of all, how do you rank to my go-to? Number one, does it give you the full range of motion and the most amount of muscle recruitment? Does that exercise give me the full range? Not just the partial, not just the top range, we're talking the full range of motion. And does that full range elicit maximum amount of muscle recruitment, hypertrophy? 2, it's gotta be able to progressive overload. After you've done all the things you need to do when it comes to your form and you've use all the set intensifiers you could. Now you got to add more weight. Can you progressive overload that exercise? And then it's got to be basically easy to do. I mean, like after you've learned your basic technique, like it just, doing a Romanian deadlift, that's fairly simple when it comes to, your basic technique. If you got to do something wonky to get in there, it's not that good. It's got to be something that your basic technique can handle, and that's that. All right, let's get into it. All right, first off, we have B stance Romanian deadlifts. Basically, you're doing like single leg RDLs with one foot in the ground for more stability. Now, is it a good exercise? Yeah, full range of motion, 100%. You're gonna have full range of motion, top to bottom, bottom to top. Now, this exercise shares a lot of the glutes, so you're getting a lot more glute than your hamstring, but you're still getting hamstring nonetheless. Now, full range of motion, 100%. Can you progressive overload it? 100%. Is it easy to do? When it comes to your basics, like, if you can do a basic RDL, you should be able to do a stagger stance RDL. Now, is this something I'm gonna have at my go-to? Definitely not. Is it something I can program for an athlete of mine? For sure, definitely if it's someone that, needs to have some unilateral exercises in there, in terms of like, making sure that both sides are getting the work done. Yeah, I'm gonna put that at probably an option 3. Definitely it's not an option 2, but it's definitely a good exercise nonetheless. All right, hamstrings for barbell back squats. Unfortunately not, right? Hamstrings really don't get loaded that well when it comes to squats. It's a glute and quad primarily are gonna get the meat and potatoes out of this exercise. So unfortunately, if I gotta do squats for hamstrings, it's gonna be one of those like, it's at the end. Really, it's like, it's gonna be a meh. Doing squats for hamstrings is like doing deadlifts for back. Barbell good mornings. Okay, now there's a few things about good mornings that I'm not a fan of. Now, number one, let's just go through the checklist. How is this exercise through its full range of motion? Great, you're gonna get good load. You're loading your spine. You're gonna get a lot of emphasis on your hamstrings. It's basically an RDL, but on your neck. It's basically the same fundamentals when it comes to an RDL. You're doing the exact same thing in terms of like hinging your butt back. The further back your butt goes, not like just bending over, but the further back your butt goes, the more of a stretch you're gonna get on your hamstrings and your glutes. When it comes to progressive overload, well, here's the thing. The heavier this gets, the harder it's gonna be for most people to keep it secure on their back. Now, Doc Mike and some other guys have done this with a safety bar, which is still good. But again, for me, it's something that it's gonna be a limiting factor for most. When you add more weight on your back, your limiting factor is gonna be the weight literally on your back, AKA almost on your neck. So when it comes to progressive overload, it's a good exercise, but again, it's gonna have its limitations. And when it comes to just like overall technique and form and can anybody do it, if you don't have a safety bar, you're stuck with a barbell in your back. And for the most part, when I see people do this exercise, it's not the easiest for them to do. So as good as an exercise as it is, it's gonna be one of those like it's all they got kind of exercises right there. So you know what? I'm gonna put it up there actually. I gotta put up there with an option 3. I'm gonna put up there for sure with I changed my mind. It's gonna be an option 3, but it's gonna be at the very end of my option 3. Okay, we have Bulgarian split squats. All right, these are exercises that I've put together based on some questions that I've had from you guys. So if you see an exercise that's in here, it's like it's there because there's been questions about, is this exercise good for hamstrings? Now, is this exercise good for hamstrings? It's not, right? Now people are like, oh, but if I put my leg a little further, you know, and only have like 9 degrees in there, it's gonna hit glute. It's not gonna do much for hamstrings, unfortunately. So I'm not even gonna waste my time even going over this, but guys, it's gonna be one of those like, yo, if you're doing Bulgarian split squats for hamstrings, I know your coaches, but like, no. We have regular conventional deadlifts. Oof. That's in there. And it's in there again for the same reason. People ask the question, what about this? The mechanics of it. Now, this is the cool thing about this exercise and why it's here. Number one, when we look at this exercise, people think this is a back exercise. It's all back. It's like, but it's not. You know why? Because this is a leg exercise. And this is a glute and a hamstring exercise. This is basically an RDL all the way to the ground with a little bit more bendage, right? So this is a very close to an RDL. Is it gonna be my go-to? Heck no. Heck no. Not at all. Definitely not. But again, why is it not? You know, when it comes to the full range of motion, number one, do we get full range of motion? Are we gonna get stretch? We are. Okay, good. But glutes are getting a lot into this exercise as well too. And then when it's hitting the floor, we're not getting the best stretch because our knees are bending a little bit more in this, right? Now again, you can bend your knees even more, but as long as you're pushing your butt back and not sitting down, you're gonna put a lot more greater emphasis on your hamstrings. But most people don't really do that, right? So that's where the confusion goes. When it comes to progressive overload, okay, great exercise to progressive overload for sure. You can add more weight here, definitely. But again, when it comes to this exercise, a very ego-driven exercise that is very seldom you see somebody doing conventional deadlifts and really just kind of like teeter-tottering on weight and exhaustion, where it kind of like just pushes you over the fence to more so like I'm adding weight and adding weight. Is this a good exercise for hamstrings? Yes. Is it a primary movement for hamstrings? It wouldn't be one of mine. It is a good exercise that will add some size to your hamstrings. So it's gonna be an option 3 for me. The glute ham raise. This exercise is one of my favorite for hamstrings. Like crazy. Why? Because you're stuck in this machine, and for the most part, people are only doing body weight. And it's literally making you do exactly what the hamstrings are doing, and that's just flexing the knee. Flexing the knee, and instead of you pulling your shin bone up, you're pulling your entire body up, which makes this thing an absolutely killer exercise. Let's go through the top. Range of motion, full range of motion. All the way up, all the way down, you're getting the hamstrings to do exactly what they're supposed to do. Now, when it comes to progressive overload, yeah, easy. Because for most people, you're doing body weight to start. When it comes to technique, easy to do, it is relatively easy to do. And I say that relatively easy to do because it's a very hard exercise for most. So when I get people to start doing glute ham, I get them to start at the top and then lowering themselves into the full range. And then I basically help them out at the bottom to help them push themselves back up. So if you have somebody that's there, or if you're even using like a stick, like, you know, even like a pole or something there to help you come back up and assist yourself, it's a great exercise that you can do. So yeah, it's tough, but it's definitely gonna be one of my option 2s for sure. Option 2, 100%. All right, now hamstring slides. Now, look, I know you probably see some women do this, and if you haven't done this before as a male, I suggest that you give it a try because it is a effective workout for sure. Now, let's go through the full range of motion. Are we getting full range of motion? We're getting a good long stretch on the way out, but we're not getting enough at the end of that range. Most of this exercise, you're gonna feel a lot more when you're pulling in. Coming all the way out, because you're basically going flat at the bottom, in that stretch position, we're relaxed, right? So this is like, this I would say would be, this movement to hamstrings would be push-ups to chest. Is it a good movement to do when you're at home? If you are at home with nothing else but like a dumbbell, I'd be like, yo, here's a killer hamstring exercise to do. When it comes down to it, this is a good exercise, but is it one of those like, this is all they got type things, right? You're still gonna burn the heck out of your hamstrings. But again, because you're not getting the fullness out of the full range of motion, like I said, at the bottom of this exercise, you're basically resting the glute bridge or the glute machine, or however you want to call it, whatever machine you want to call it, hip thrust. We got hip thrust, glute machine, what do you want to call it? It's a glute machine. Just saying that right there, guys, it's a glute machine. Now, when it comes to glutes, I'm gonna have this in the glute tier list, and it's gonna be a little different. When it comes to hamstrings, all right, we gotta understand, when are we getting a stretch in our hamstrings? That's what we have to look at when it comes to the full range of motion and muscle recruitment, okay? The hamstrings, when they are straight, basically, the opposite of when the knee is flexing, when your knee is straight. Let's just say, there you go, here's me here. You know what? I'll be right back. All right, guys, here we go. We got Carl and Ken. Now, for some of y'all who are like, you know, someone's gonna say something stupid, but reason why I can't use Carl is because Carl don't got no knees that bend. If for some reason his knees don't bend, his knees bend. There you go, boom. This is perfect, you know what I mean? Right now, hamstring is flexed. Right now, the hamstring is not flexed. Now, if we want this hamstring to get a really good stretch, right now it's lengthened, right now it's shortened. So if we had like a little bit of band here that was pulling you this way, and it was still pulling, and you can kind of push your hip this way, now we're getting a crazy stretch. It's like if you ever sat down like this and put your hands out straight and like touch your toes without bending your back, you're like, oh shoot, that's a crazy stretch. Glute bridges, right? We're here like this and we're like, bam, all right? Boom, right? We're doing a glute bridge, but bam, like this. Now, at the top of this, the weight on here, the hamstrings are, what are they? If I just went like this, guess what? My man here, he's flexed. So right now, the glutes are being worked, but now at the bottom of this, when his hips are coming down, his hamstrings are still shortened. Man, pull your pants up, dog. If you look at it, doesn't matter where his legs are at. I'm here, and guess what? They're still flexed. At the top of this, they're still flexed. So I might feel my hamstrings at the top of the lift, but at the bottom, well, unfortunately, my legs are still, basically, my knees are still flexed. So we're not getting much from this. Now, when it comes to glutes, the glutes at the bottom are, nothing's happening because they're sitting at the bottom. The only time that the hamstrings and the glutes are getting any real activity here, or activation, is when they're at the top, when they're flexed. So unfortunately, this exercise for hamstrings is gonna go down to like, shoot, it's gonna be in like a 3. It's gonna be an option 3. We're going down to lying hamstring curls with the dumbbells. Well, here's the thing. At the bottom of this, the only way to make this really good when it comes to the full range of motion, because it's a great exercise to do. Not only do you get to be in this like plantar, like your feet are basically, your toes are pointed. And because your toes are pointed, we're basically shortening. We're shortening our hamstring. We're shortening our calf, which is gonna put more emphasis on our hamstrings. So in that position at the top is really good. Squeezing, everything's great about it. But at the bottom, what happens is the dumbbell gets in the way, and all of a sudden where you want a nice stretch, we're losing ground. So the only real way for this to be really, really good is if you do this on a bench. Now if we do this on a bench, you need a partner that's there that can make sure the dumbbell stays in your feet, stays locked into both your feet while doing the exercise. So because of that, this exercise is gonna be one of those like, that's all they got, I gotta do these, right? Still a good exercise, but again, you know, it's like one of those like the ground's getting in the way again, almost like push-ups for chest. All right, we got the reverse hack squat. You guys probably seen this before. People load the crap out of the machine as well too. How's the reverse hack squat? If you got a really good reverse hack squat machine, it's great. It's basically like the reverse hack squat is basically the machine version of a good morning, right? You should just call like a good morning, a machine good morning. Great exercise to do. Now, where the good morning is in option 3, the machine makes up all the ground that the good morning doesn't. Number 1, it's easy to just step right into. When we walk, we'll go from the bottom in terms of like form-wise. We can just get right into it. We have some support on our shoulders, good to go. When it comes to progressive overload, you're in a machine. Of course you can, right? You can progressive overload easily on the machine. And then when it comes to full range of motion, we're getting the full range of motion. Top to bottom, bottom to top. The shorten, contraction, and lengthening. Come back here, Ken. Or Carl. Ken? Ken. We're here, bam, we're down here pushing the butt out. We got the arms up like this. And we're like, oh, stretch is crazy. And then we get all the way up, right? All the way down here. Knees are bent, are basically kind of straight. And we're getting a crazy stretch in the back of the hamstrings. And then, bam, we get to come all the way up. So, thanks again, bud. Good exercise. This one's gonna go to a go-to. The Nordic hamstring curl. The Nordic hamstring curl, the Nordic curl is basically like a glute ham, same thing. The only thing with the Nordic curl is that if you have one of these, you can actually assist yourself a lot easier than the glute ham machine. So good exercise to do, but again, at the bottom of this, guess what happens? At the very end of the stretch, the difference between the Nordic and the glute ham is, in the glute ham, you can actually get a better stretch at the lengthened part of the lift while still getting a great peak contraction at the shortened part of the lift. So when it comes to the Nordic curl, unfortunately, the ground gets in the way, right? So the best thing about the Nordic curl is that you can spot yourself. So basically, when you're on the way down, last minute, you kind of push down, do a push-up, coil yourself in, and push yourself back up, and you can perform these on your own. The problem is, guess what? On the way down, you can really get a great activation in terms of like the negative, holding it down, then push yourself back up. But unfortunately, at the bottom of this, if you go all the way to the bottom, you're resting. As good as an exercise as it still is, it's going to be one of those, you know what? Let's just put it in those, you know, we got to put into this is all they got type thing. The reverse hyper. The reverse hyper for me is something that I like using with my client, Carolyn. And I use that machine more so for her glutes more than her hamstrings. Why? Well, again, if you look at, say I'm doing an RDL or I'm doing a good morning, the weight's here, my butt's being pushed back, and because my butt's being pushed back, I'm getting this crazy stretch in my hamstrings, and then coming all the way up. When I'm doing this, the glutes erectors a bit, the glutes a lot, and hamstrings are gonna help pull myself back up like this. Now, if I'm on the machine like this, and everything's kind of hanging over, the main muscle that's gonna be working here to pull my leg up is going to be my glutes. Right? Because glutes are gonna help with flexion and extension of the hip. And basically on the way at the bottom, there's a nice stretch here at the lengthening, and then there's a shortening of the glutes. As good as an exercise as this is more glutes than anything else, and this is gonna be in one of these kind of like down to the bottom, like an option 3 type thing. We have your regular I had to put these in there because again, these are questions, right? Reverse lunge. Is this a good exercise for hamstrings? No. Reverse lunge is glutes all day and then quads. So when it comes down to it, like full range of motion, not there for the hamstrings. Progressive overload, it's just not there for the hamstrings. So guys, it's gonna be down here. So if you ever think about doing like reverse for your hamstrings, not the way to go. All right, we have seated hamstring curls. Where does this one go? Seated hamstring curls is basically the top of the top. Any kind of isolation in a sense. Now when it comes to this, because we're in the position we're in an upright seated position, and the hips are basically in a nice position that gives us a nice stretch when our legs are straight in that stretch position, the full range of motion of this is absolutely amazing. From top to bottom, bottom to top, your hamstrings are getting annihilated in the best way, from the shortened contraction to the lengthened contraction. Progressive overload, 100%. Easy to do, you sit in a machine. Fix your form a bit, keep your torso nice and, neutral. If you want to add a little emphasis into it, you can hunch over a bit and, we can get into that after, but, technique wise. But again, this entire machine is great. Romanian Deadlifts. Where are we getting this? Hamstrings. Great exercise for hamstrings and glutes, but hamstrings, especially when we're pushing the hips back. Slight bend in the knees, but making sure the hips go back to stretch. Full range of motion is great. You can emphasize the range of motion by, you can put yourself up on a riser a little bit. That's fine. Progressive overload, for sure you can, 100%. The limiting factor will be what? Your grip? Cool. Wear some straps. Get straps. The exercise itself in terms of like, is it easy to do? You just have to learn basic fundamentals and form for this exercise, and you will reap all the benefits of this exercise. This exercise is going to be an option 2 for me. One-legged RDLs, dumbbell or barbell. doesn't really matter. Is it a good exercise for hamstrings? Well, here's the thing. It's way better to do a B stance because guess what? You actually have some balance. Anything where you're leaving your leg up and you have to worry about balance is gonna take away from the exercise. You don't want your body worrying about balance. Unless you're trying to come back and you need your proprioception, you know, figured out, if you have like a brain injury or whatever, that makes sense. But if you're completely fine and normal, you don't need to be balancing to get your hamstrings to work. I've seen this happen before, and I see a lot of this, and people are losing reps because they keep falling over. B stance is a lot better. We're gonna put this thing down to, hey man, that's all they got. That's all they got. All right, we have kneeling hamstring curls. Great exercise. Kneeling hamstring curls. Anything where you're isolating the hamstrings is going to be a go-to exercise for sure, 100%. Especially when it comes to this exercise, you can progressive overload. Especially when it comes to this exercise, the 4-range of motion is amazing. Making sure that we keep our hip on the pad, you know, keeping tension all the way through and not bending the other leg. We can go over them in other videos, but again, when it comes to this exercise, great exercise from top to bottom, bottom to top. And then is it easy to do? Of course it is. You sit in a machine. Machines are easy to do. This guy is going to the top for a go-to. Okay, dumbbell RDLs. Where do dumbbell RDLs go? Dumbbell RDLs are gonna go into option 2. Why? Because we can get a better range of motion because of dumbbells. We don't have the bar, and if you're using bigger plates, or plates regardless, they're gonna be bigger than a dumbbell. So your limiting factor will not be the floor. You don't have to put yourself on risers, and basically you get the same benefits you're getting from the barbell, but then dumbbell's gonna give you a little more free range of motion when it comes down to it. So 4-range of motion, 100%, great muscle activation and hypertrophy. Progressive overload, of course. Again, what's the limiting factor gonna be? It's gonna be holding the dumbbells. We should be in a position where we're getting stronger in our torso. Our torso, for the most part, should never be our limiting factor. And if it is, then you have to work on strengthening your back, your lats, your rhomboids, your traps, your core, all those things. We're talking hamstrings, either way. So this exercise, again, it's going up there, but it's gonna go before glute ham, and it's gonna go before RDLs. All right, sumo deadlifts. Where do these bad boys go? Sumo deadlifts are gonna go exactly where the option 3 in terms of where the deadlifts are. Sumo deadlifts are a good exercise to do. Full range of motion, you're gonna get that same type of feel when it comes to your Romanian deadlifts, right? Any deadlift you're doing hinging of the hip, meaning your hips going back. Come here, Ken, get over here, buddy. Hinging of the hip is basically your knees staying and your butt's kind of doing this. Oh, that's perfect, look at that. Any deadlift, the shins are basically almost staying straight and the hips are going back and you're kind of doing this like hovering or trying to like, you know, dodge sitting on a nasty public toilet, right? Boom, that's basically it. When you're squatting, we're getting a lot more knee flexion, and unfortunately this guy doesn't have the ankle, so I can't do that. But again, we're getting a lot of this going here. When it comes to doing a sumo deadlift, you're basically doing a wide stance RDL, sort of, right? So we are getting a lot of emphasis on the hamstrings, just not as much because we're a little bit wider than we are when it comes to the conventional deadlift and the Romanian deadlifts. This is one of those exercises where they're good, but I gotta put it out of like this is all they got, because it is a good exercise and you are working the adductors, but we're talking like hamstrings. All right, last but not least, guys, we got lying hamstring curls. There's so many things we can do with the lying hamstring curl to make it that much better, but where all the other exercise in the this is all they got, we're not able to fulfill, lying hamstring curls are able to do that. Now, when it comes to lying hamstring curls, a couple little tips you can do. You know, raise your thighs. Put something underneath your thighs to give you better stretch at the bottom. So when you're at the bottom of the lift, you're not bottoming out on the cables. So if you put something underneath your thighs, it raises up your hips a little more. You get a little more stretch at the bottom, and you got a good exercise. Either way, it's a great exercise, and it's going to the top. 4-range of motion, progressive overload, and it's very easy to do. So there's my tier list, guys, for hamstrings. Look, if there's other exercises that I missed, let me know in the comment section below. We're gonna do these again and make sure we do it like we'll do these again, and then you'll have a mix of my list and a mix of things that I missed of your list too, and we'll do it all over. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, you know how it is. Iron sharpens iron. Progressive overload your life. In the meantime, keep dream chasing. Peace.